Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon. Yang berusaha Profesor Dr. Fauziah Abdul Rahim, Director University Teaching and Learning Center UTLC, honorable panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Before we begin, let us make dua that all that we think, say, plan and act during this forum will be bestowed by the Almighty with bounty of Rahman in ensuring its true success. Let us begin by reciting Kitab Al-Fatihah. Amin, amin ya rabbal alamin. Ladies and gentlemen, with the collaboration between University Teaching and Learning Center UTLC, Council of Professors Universiti Utara Malaysia, as well as Persatuan Akademi Persatu Universiti Utara Malaysia, it is with great pleasure to bid you a warm welcome and to have you participating and sharing in this special forum entitled Voices Heard, the roles and expectations of the inclusive community of learners in the new norm and beyond. Before we begin, let us hear a welcome speech from Yang Berusaha Profesor Dr. Fauziah Abdul Rahim, Director of UTLC, representing the host of this event.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Very good afternoon. Inclusive community of learners is an ecosystem of teaching and learning of those involved directly and indirectly in the lives and livings within institutions of higher learning, of which lecturers and students are among the key participants. Inclusivity suggests that voices are not only heard, but also celebrated and acknowledged as vital feat to facilitate improved teaching and learning environment. This forum serves to unearth issues relating to the roles and expectations with a view to support a balanced and harmonious ecosystem in which these participants are able to live together and support one another for favorable future outcomes within the new norm and beyond. I'd like to welcome participants to the UTLC First Webinar Forum series, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the esteemed panelists and the wise moderator and the organizers who are involved in this e-forum webinar. May Allah make ease for all of us in this time of crisis. May Allah grant the esteemed panelists and moderator great health. May Allah also grant great health to the organizers and UUM community at large. May the intentions and outcomes of this webinar be felt by all members of the university in order for us to be able to harmoniously create an ecosystem for teaching and learning that enable us to transform the quality of teaching and learning in UUM. Make your voices heard so that together we make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Fauziah. Ladies and gentlemen, our forum today will be moderated by Yang Berusaha Dr. Ani Munirah binti Muhammad, a senior lecturer from the School of Law, Universiti Utara Malaysia. Without further ado, I would like to hand over this session to Yang Berusaha Dr. Ani Munirah Muhammad to introduce our distinguished panelists and to conduct the forum. So Dr. Ani, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Madam Fadlina, for handing over the session to me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Ani Munirah Muhammad from the School of Law, University Utara Malaysia, and I am so glad to be welcoming everyone today. We have audience, as I can see from YouTube as well as Facebook. We have audience from UUM and also other institutions as well. We welcome everyone to the webinar forum. This forum is casted to YouTube as well as Facebook Live. So hi everyone. If you have any questions, you can just post at the comment section and we will pick up your questions during the Q&A session. And another thing, we appreciate that you can treat each other with respect. So in the comment section, please use kind words to post your comments. And remember to avoid any sensitive remarks not limited to religion, race, skin color, and the like. Well, everyone, with the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the challenge become even bigger for both educators and learners to sustain the inclusive community of learners. And that is the reason why UTLC, in collaboration with Majlis Professor as well as Persatuan Akademi of UUM, decides today to host this forum to discuss this very issue. And I have to say that today's session is so special, okay, because we bring to you not only panelists to share their thoughts from the educator's perspective, but we also have one panelist from the Students' Representative Council of UUM. Together, we will spend approximately 1.5 hours until 2 hours covering 3 rounds of discussion. Before we begin, I would like to introduce you our line of panelists. Although all 3 of them do not need any introduction, but for the benefit of our audience who might be joining us for the first time and meeting our panelists for the first time, I will just provide brief introduction. Our first panelist is Professor Dr. Rosna Awang Hashim, a full-time professor at the School of Education, UUM, former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and International of UUM, and former Dean of the School of Education at UUM. Currently, she is a motivation scientist and an educational psychologist at School of Education and also the president of UUM Academic Association Persatuan and the vice chairman of the UUM Council of Professors. How are you doing, Prof?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ani.
The next panelist is Associate Professor Dr. Sarimah Shai Abdullah, also from the School of Education, UUM. She is currently the Deputy Director of UTLC. She has wide experience in teaching and learning issues, just to name a few: learning as social practice, adolescent literacy, and classroom interaction. How are you doing, Doctor?
I'm good. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Dr. Ani.
And our third panelist is Brother Muhammad Azri Mizra, a third-year UUM student of Bachelor of Business Administration, majoring in Logistics and Transport. At present, he is the Vice President 1 of UUM Student Representative Council, Student Ambassador for Maybank, member of Beta Gamma Sigma of UUM Chapter, President of Student Development and Leadership Committee, and his experience in dealing with students' issues. Welcome, Azri. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm great. Thank you, Dr. Ani.
Okay, all right. Okay, now let's go ahead with the first round of the forum. Okay. The topic today is centralized on creating inclusive community of learners. This question I'll be directing to Prof. Rosna. Prof, can you please enlighten us as to what does the phrase inclusive community mean in teaching and learning, and why is it important, Prof?
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Ani, for your kind introduction. Well, inclusivity normally refers to in bahasa we call it keterangkuman. All right. When we talk about inclusivity, we talk about equity. I mean, ability to participate for all learners and all members of the community, for instance. And also, we sort of celebrate and respect the unique talents of people in our community, meaning that they are free to come forward, to bring their whole self to university, to the classroom, to enrich the learning community, to enrich the learning experience. Or in other words, the ability to bring themselves to complement each other so that we can make a better discussion, a better deliberation, etc. And in the new norms, it includes accessibility to tools at the same time. I think we cannot forget that accessibility is one of the issues during this new norm, meaning the accessibility to tools and also internet facilities. Well, some people may have the tools, may have the internet facilities, but somehow affordability is also another issue. So in the new norms, you're talking about accessibility to data, accessibility to internet facilities, to tools, to gadgets, and also affordability. So these are sort of the definition of inclusive learning or inclusive community that we can sort of redefine in the new norm. If we compare, if you look at the overall perspective of inclusive education, actually, in addition to the new norms practices, we need to be able to ensure that students feel that they are equally valued, meaning that they're able to participate and contribute fully to the social, cultural, or academic life, both on campus and also online. I mean, because we believe that literature says if these values were fully embodied, I mean, they will bring out the best in the students, especially because in the context of learning for undergraduate, we are focusing on the holistic learning outcome of the individual or students, especially. So how can we create an inclusive, nurturing environment that can instill healthy respect for differences, for instance? We are talking about diverse beliefs, culture, ethnicity, gender, spirituality, even learning style, learning approaches, socioeconomic status and interests. How can we celebrate all this? How can each of them with various sort of characteristics that I mentioned earlier can come together and feel that they are equally valued? Meaning that the design and delivery of the teaching and learning environment and assessment methods should be able to allow students to harness the potential equally. So those are what I understand about inclusive community or inclusive pedagogy. Why is it important? Well, I keep talking about students, but I believe it takes two to tango. Not simply students, but also the entire community, especially in terms of teaching and learning, I think is the lecturer at the same time. So how can both student and lecturer work together hand in hand to enrich the inclusive community? Why is it important? Because as you know, one of the main purpose of higher education is to prepare holistic graduates who can serve not only Sinto, not only local, but also in the global community, who can interact and also function effectively in a very diverse society and facing the VUCA world, very volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So are we providing enough, or are we inclusive enough to allow them to thrive under this environment where they can become a very responsible and functional citizen? So at the same time, we hope that university that embrace inclusive pedagogy should be able to prepare graduates to participate in diverse society and also to become critical thinkers, and also perhaps they can become advocates for social change, not simply graduate with 4 flat with academic accolades here and there, award, best student, best whatever, but also somebody who can function and also serve the community and who has what we call a global mindset, who are sensitive to the current issue, to the global issue, and eventually who can give back to the community. So my final say is that our job is to create an inclusive community of inquiries that are safe, where we can encourage intellectual curiosity, we can encourage respectful dialogue among the people in the learning community, because all this can enhance students' personal development better. So that is my introduction, Dr. Ani.
Thank you so much, Prof. Rusna. I have to agree with you. One of the biggest challenges for the academic ecosystem is to create an inclusive community environment that instills a healthy respect for diversity. Well, as you have mentioned, diversity of learners can come in various aspects, such as culture, ethnicity, race, spirituality, gender identity, learning style, socio-economic status, and interests, which brings me to the next question to Azri. So, Azri, what are the challenges faced by learners in the new norm that we are facing nowadays?
Okay, thank you so much to Dr. Ani for the question given just now. First and foremost, I would like to say thank you so much to UTLC for giving me this wonderful opportunity to become the panelist for today's webinar series 1. This Voices Heard, the Rules and Expectation of the Inclusive Community of Learners in the New Norm and Beyond. So the question given is actually about challenges faced by learners in the new norm. As simple word, we as a student, what are the challenges that we face? So as a response to the COVID-19 crisis, many countries around the world closed school, colleges, and universities to halt the spread of the virus actually. So I quoted a data, according to data from UNESCO. The peak in school closures was registered at the beginning of last year's April 2020, when around 1.6 billion learners were affected across 194 countries, accounting for more than 90% of total enrolled learners. So the student closures of school mean that education policymakers, school principals, and teachers, lecturers had to find alternative to face-to-face instruction in order to guarantee learners' right to education. So many systems have adopted online teaching and also learning on an unprecedented scale, often in combination with widespread remote learning materials. So on top of that, any university students around the world are experiencing considerable stress as a result of the transformation in how they are taught and fear of an uncertain future. So while those students with children are juggling work, finances, and family responsibilities, we hear a lot on the news about the pandemic's impact on the international students number, university funds, and general economy, but don't hear as much from students themselves on how actually COVID-19 has impacted their life. So many students reflected on how they are coping with feeling overwhelmed and frustrated as they adapt to the new normal, as classes move online, causing anxiety for some. The monotonous routines and being homebound has led to struggles with self-regulations, keeping up with content, and feeling isolated from fellow students or others. So images of shadows, timetables, and technology feature prominently, with many documenting difficulties in studying while dealing with other COVID-19 stresses like grim world update, panic buying, and fear of what would happen to themselves as well as their family and friends. So in my opinion, frankly speaking, I do think that it is not easy to adopt or adapt to online learning in response to a sudden pandemic such as COVID-19 without encountering many problems and challenges. So these obstacles may include issues such as unfamiliarity with the information technology platform use, which we have limited internet access, insufficient experience in dealing with online learning platforms in terms of student participations, interactivity, and engagement, which also lead to lack of process to assess online learning outcomes and lack of experience in developing online course content or transforming courses from offline to online modes. So some university instructors and students have little experience or training in using, assessing, and managing online distance education actually. So multiple online learning platform could be one of the reason for the information overload, which can cause work overload and increase stress levels among students also. So apparently, the number of hours students spend in front of the computers also may be one of the few challenges that we as the learners face off. So number of incremental hours that students spend with their computers or mobile device during COVID-19 actually looks to be a normal reaction to fulfilling online learning tasks. It has had a number of critical consequences for students, which these include the increased costs associated with buying more internet connection time, buying the hardware needed for online courses, increasing their level of focus on subjects, time management, sacrificing some of the work inside home, which could create extra work for the other family members also. So in addition, students are required to deal with multiple online learning tasks that might come from different multiple online learning platforms, which may lead to sleeplessness. So all these problems hamper students' academic performance and could create more stress or stressful life. So all in all, among all the challenges, I do still believe that on every cloud has a silver lining, which I also believe that all the challenges will have some proper solutions toward it in the future. So that's my answer to Dr. Ani for the first question.
Thank you so much, Azri, for your answer. But maybe I can just add on a little bit my query to you before we go to Dr. Sarima. Do you feel any differences among the challenges that you are facing in the past before the pandemic with the coming of the pandemic? Is the challenge greater or how?
Actually, we are already in the pandemic in around 1 or almost 2 years right now. So there are actually a few differences before this in the year of 2020 and now in the year of 2021. We as a students or as a learner, actually, we know on how to actually adapt or be adaptable on the changes of the technology, the online learning platform, and the alternative or the ways of the teachers or the lecturers given us regarding about how to actually adapt and adopt to the new norm of teaching. So I do believe that right now it's actually, bak kata orang Melayu, hikmah lah atas apa yang terjadi. We are here to receive the impact, the positive impact of the COVID-19 or pandemic regarding about what has happened to us. And for me as a student, frankly speaking or honest speaking, I do believe that we are now be more independent, be more adaptable on what the processes, workers, and also the challenges are now quite low in terms of the numbers and quantity. But all in all, I do believe that all the challenges can have or lead to some solutions, which I already stated that every cloud has a silver lining for these challenges. And I do believe that as a student, we need to be strong. We need to be there together. And if we have any problems, maybe I can give you guys for the students one tips. You still can get connection, communicate with your lecturers or your teachers, so that they would know and understand you better. And you would tell your teachers or lecturers about regarding whatever any issues that you face off in the class or outside the class. So maybe that's the answer for Dr. Ani.
Thank you so much, Azri, for itemizing all the challenges that you learners are facing in this implementing the inclusive community of learners. So some of the key terms that I can pick up from your session slot just now is the words stress, adaptability, adaptability, following issues such as technology, difficulties, panic buying, internet access, interactivity with the lessons, engagement, little time for learning, and also having to attend to multiple tasks coming from multiple online learning activities as well as assessment. But I do like your way of thinking so much that when you mentioned, let's change this entire pandemic issue into hikmah so that we can now twist all the negativities into positivities. Now, coming back to what Professor mentioned just now, that challenges, roles, and expectations all takes two to tango. Okay, so we have learned about all the challenges coming from learners. What about challenges coming from educators? I would like to pose this question to Dr. Sarima. What are the challenges faced by educators for teaching and learning in the new norm? Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ani. Can you hear me? Because my connectivity is a little bit is lagging, so I'm sorry if it's getting worse. I will just have to switch off the video. Okay, thank you so much for the question. What are the challenges? I think it's in a way, when I listen to Azri, the challenges are quite similar, only it's coming from different perspective, a different angle. For lecturers, I can highlight the most, the most common challenges that they face, which is the technology know-how in doing online teaching and learning, and in motivating students in the online context, as well as other things like abiding by the standards of teaching, regardless of whether you are teaching before pandemic or during pandemic. The life has to go on, but actually the requirement is more because you have an added work to deal with the online thing. And of course, there will be all this requires adjustment from the lecturers, and all this take time. But I will just go back a bit on the technology know-how. Some of us, I think sometimes I'm thinking along the conspiracy theory. I always thought that, that's the reason why we have to be online. Prior to pandemic, we have already been exposed to teaching online with all these Web 2.0 tools, etc., etc. And in a way, we've kind of been prepared for, doing online. So for some of us, we have actually tried 30% online, and we have tried with all kinds of tools. But for some lecturers who are, as we point out, students have diverse needs, lecturers too have their own diversity. A lot of time we think in terms of students' diversity, but lecturers too actually have their diverse needs. So in this case, some lecturers have not been comfortable doing online thing even before the pandemic. But came pandemic, it's like a no choice for them. So it's a big shock for them to realize that they have no choice actually but to engage in online teaching. So, so the scary part when I speak to some of the lecturers is the fact that they feel there's a mismatch between what they know about technology compared to what the students know, and they feel that feel inadequate when facing problems like doing, for instance, breakout room and it doesn't work. How do you manage? Some students are not in the room, some students are left. So how do you manage that? And that looks kind of scary, and that kind of put you on the spot in which you look incapable. So that's one of the challenges that lecturers face. And another thing is the fact that lecturers, like students, like everyone else, lecturers have life. Their work, they are not just sitting in the university teaching, but they have a family life. And, lecturers are not rich people. Unlike what some people think, they at home, they have to share resources with their children. Everybody's doing online. So sometimes they're dealing with, in fact, when thinking about, I know of a friend who actually had to buy 5 handphones for 5 children. And sometimes when you spend that money on your kids, you will not have enough to spend on yourself. And so you might have an old computer which doesn't fit with the new technology, and this actually causes you to seem to be unprepared for being advanced in the technology use. Of course, then there's this question of connectivity. Like me myself, I feel so inadequate anytime my internet could go lagging. Another challenge is to motivate students. Because as Prof. Rosna pointed out, there are various types of students with various needs and learning styles. And motivating students to learn during this context is not easy, especially if you multiply that with the number of students. If you have a small class, small number of students, it's kind of easier for you to kind of gauge which student work in which way. But if you have a class of 200, 300 students, it takes a lot of effort to actually find out which student works in which way and who is coming from low socioeconomic status and so on. So that's another challenge that lecturers have to face. And at times, and I'm not saying all students are like this, a lot of students are very responsible in what they do, but there will be a few who kind of, have difficulty maybe to engage in this online thing. They may appear in the class, but they're not there. So lecturers have to think of the way to engage all students to make sure that they participate in the class. Again, as I point out, you are like, lecturers are like, not only doing the teaching in the context of new norm, but they are also bringing the old expectation, because they have to abide by the, MQA, the outcome-based education standard. So they are bringing what they were doing before pandemic into pandemic time. And not only they have to cater for the online learning, they have to figure out how to make sure that they are fair. And fairness is very important. If you are teaching a few groups of students and you're teaching one group, another person is teaching another group, you have to coordinate. Coordinate takes time. You coordinate in terms of the kinds of assessment that you're going to do, making sure lecturers understand the same content that is being delivered, to be sure that exam questions are fair to all students, and to decide on the kind of, on the ways, if you're not doing final exam, what are the assignments that will be appropriate for all students to be fair to everyone. So this again is taking a lot of time and effort on the lecturer's part. So as I said, keeping within the normal situation of teaching within the context of new norm. So that's taking away a lot of adjustment on the lecturers, a lot of time in planning and in learning. And the best part is to learn to do online. That too. Sometimes people will say lecturers maybe are resistant, they are not willing to learn, but let me tell you, they are willing to learn. I know of many lecturers, I can tell you, most of my lecturer friends, they are really hardworking, they're very concerned about their students, but they have to decide, do I attend to this workshop, or do I plan for my exam, or do I go for, look for the right tool for my next online class? I'm having difficulty with, setting up the discussion group. What is the best tool for my students to engage synchronously and asynchronously? So there are a lot of things going on, and it's a lot. It's a lot of challenges on the plate. So time is a big factor. And in UUM, I do not know about other universities, but in UUM, we have 2 semester system. We have the 2 semesters for the undergraduate students, and we have the trimester system for the postgraduate students. If you are unlucky, you'll be teaching both undergrad and postgrad, and the whole year you'll be teaching without a break. There is no breather time for you to actually think, to plan, to reflect. So it's taking a lot of toll on the lecturers, and I can imagine that it does the same to the students. So, but talking from the perspective of the lecturers, it can be very stressful, emotionally draining. You asked it. Yeah, I think that's about it that I can say about it. More than that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarima, for your feedback. So there are among the key terms that I can pick up from your slide just now is some of the challenges faced by educators is the technology know-how, okay, as well as the biggest challenge of abiding by the standards, as well as teaching requirements as well, when we have to plan more for teaching delivery, for the assessment, for example. And also one challenge, which is I have to admit myself, is to sustain the motivation of the students, taking into account the various diverse backgrounds, diverse learning styles, diverse accessibility of students as well. Yeah, and also one of the issues is which I find high similarity with the issue pointed out by Azri earlier, was for being at home, Okay, a commitment to the family now is divided because now we have to make the time for teaching as well as students make the time for learning. Okay, and potentially also is the issue of getting new devices, okay, for the children, which now brings me to the next question which I want to pose to Azri. Okay, Azri has mentioned earlier that why not we change the musibah that we are having from the pandemic to hikmah, okay, something that we can take benefit or take advantage of. We can learn new things, we can learn new ideas, new tools, new applications, for example. And at the same time, Dr. Sarima also mentioned that life goes on. Okay, in the past, these are the challenges. Now with the pandemic, we also have such challenges. Okay, now having mentioned this is the matching of ideas between the challenges faced by learners as well as the challenges faced by educators. Azri, I would like to ask you, what are the roles of learners in teaching and learning in realizing the inclusive community of learners? Because now what we see is what we aim to achieve is both learners and educators jump together into the wagon of academic ecosystem. Okay, we both have our challenges, but now what we want is no one gets left behind. We want everybody to be included, everybody to follow through. Okay, so can you share with us what are your thoughts as to the roles of learners in realizing this inclusive community of learners? Over to you, Azri.
Thank you so much to Dr. Ani. I'm very agree with Dr. Ani when she talked about before pandemic, we also have few challenges, and now we also have challenges, but in the other aspects, but life must go on, isn't it? So to answer this questions, roles of learners in teaching and learning, I would like to only enhance role of learners in learning. So as you all know, currently, any university students around the world are experiencing considerable stress as a result of the transformation in how they are taught and fear of an uncertain future. It's been agreed by so many people, while those students with children are juggling work, finances, and family responsibilities in their homes and also at their universities or colleges. So for me, in my opinion, students need to be more adaptable with the current situation that consists of multiple online learning alternatives and platforms. They need to try to understand more on technologies that will help and assist them to go through the process of online learning. They need to be adaptable. They need to be adaptable in the current way or the new technologies that given to us. So students need to develop, monitor, and adjust their academic plans to ensure that they are on track to attain the credential they seek as expeditiously as possible. So for me, sometimes that entails managing academic credits across multiple institutions. So technologies to help identify and intervene with students at academic risk or to give students social or community resource referrals are still extremely new. So even so, students in particular appreciate them and might especially need them now. So in addition, institutions that have adopted student success technologies early and deployed them widely have a significant advantage during COVID-19, these pandemic days. So when digital life is far less constrained than life in the physical world, which I do believe that students need help completing their academic terms and earning credentials during this extraordinary crisis. And the student success technologies can provide digital sources of help and support, both sides, help and support. So the COVID-19 pandemic will have many lessons for all of us. We can get so many important lessons during this pandemic of COVID-19 days, and among them will likely be the ways in which student success technologies can help students' academic and even personal concerns, and the ways in which these systems and data can be improved to better help the students and those who support them when a new normal has established itself. So in addition, students also must be more occupied with independent learning. So I'm very support in this independent learning. students need to understand that they need to be independent to be survived during this pandemic situation. And I do believe that right now, most of the students are now be more independent compared to before, because at the moment right now, if we want to survive and if we want to thrive, we need to be more independent. So if they don't know something, they need to have their own initiative on asking the lecturers regarding their inquiry in the class or outside the class. So distance learning is typically less structured, in my opinion, and therefore relies on learners to autonomously regulate and organize their learning processes. So metacognitive strategies such as they can monitor and evaluate progress toward goal achievement. They can adjust learning strategies if necessary. They can mobilize personal and environmental resources, as well as other self-regulated learning strategies, such as the students might also set goals, and managing one's time are considered to be even more important in distance learning than in traditional learning settings. So actually, this pandemic of COVID-19 gives us more benefit in teaching and learning, because we can learn so many technologies, we can learn so many alternative initiatives and ways to improve all the teachers and all the learners to gain more beneficial, effective, and more efficient way. So furthermore, several studies have indicated that the use of self-regulated learning strategies changes with age, suggesting that younger students need more support in regulating their learning. All in all, I do really support that students must be independent during the pandemic of COVID-19 days, because if they are not independent enough, they cannot survive. So that's my point. So moreover, I believe that the student need to seek help if they have any mental issues or disturbance, because right now we are dealing with stressful life. I do believe that most of students give that as an excuse, or maybe it's true. We are dealing with stressful life, because in these rough times, anything could happen, and the most pressuring thing that will bother us is our mental health and emotional support. So if the students have any emotional or mental issues, they can seek help and they can share to their lecturers or to their teachers whatever disturb them during the class, in the class, or outside the class. So I do believe that right now, all the lecturers and also all the teachers are very open-minded, and they are willing to help, willing to receive any sharing regarding about what students need, and so on and so forth. So all in all, finally, I do believe that students also need to have their own initiative to have a proper and more conducive learning center or location. Because when we talk about rural areas, students that are coming from the outside urban areas, they are having much difficulties in terms of internet connection, and also sometimes they didn't have any devices to help them or to assist them to go through with online learning activities. So we are really understanding. As a student leader, I do really understand that this is not anybody's fault, since the pandemic hits us with no hint at all. So, but everyone needs to know on how to play their role better in order to sustain and survive in every single work or task they should do, in class or outside class. It's either academic purposes or their responsibilities at their home as a son or a daughter to their mom or to their parents. So play your part. I want all the students to play their part and make sure we succeed this together. So that's my answer to the second question to Dr. Ani.
So much, Azri, for that enlightening sharing your thoughts about what can the students do in order to achieve the status of inclusive community of learners among our UUM students. Okay, some of the points that I can pick up from the great things that you have mentioned just now is the independent learning strategies or the autonomous learning strategies of the students, particularly because the educators cannot be monitoring you 24/7 because we are all at our homes, for example, and therefore learners would need to develop or monitor their own academic plans, particularly that when they are if there is any need for them to adjust the learning strategies, then by all means, okay, because what we want at the end of the day is to complete all the learning materials, to go through, complete all the assessments, okay, and the takeaways from the courses that we are taking, and morely to rely more on self-regulation, okay, rather than no one is to pinpoint, okay, to us. What we do is we are answerable to everything that we do. We're answerable to everything that we can achieve. Okay, based on that, okay, we have seen the student leaders' thoughts as to what are the roles of learners in implementing the inclusive community of learners. Why not we hear from Dr. Sarima the educators' thoughts as to what are the roles of educators in realizing community of learners in teaching and learning. Dr. Sarima?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ani. Okay, what are the roles of the lecturers? Okay, I can name a few, but I agree with Azri totally that adaptability is a very important thing that everyone has to be able to do. Okay, the first thing which I think that the lecturers have to do is to, I mean, like it or not, you have to accept that we do not have a choice, that we have to embrace the virtual learning or online learning. And so learning about the tools is a must, regardless of all the challenges. There are ways to learn, and I'm sure UUM and any other universities do provide trainings on all these tools. And I think lecturers have to accept, if we are so used to giving lectures during the face-to-face classrooms, we have to now realize that in a way, we have been told that we have to move to 21st century learning, which highlight student-centered learning. Now, in the case of new norm, student-centered learning has got to be the way. We don't really have the option, because if we are to continue doing lecture online, is going to be very tiring. If the class is 3 hours, doing lecture for 3 hours, or even 1.5 hours, the students are not going to listen. They're going to switch off. And look, all we have to do is just switch off our video and mute ourselves. I do that when I attend like boring lectures. So like it or not, in Malay we would say nak tak nak, we have to accept that this student-centered learning has to be the way forward. Now, in doing online learning, because it's tiring for the lecturer to lecture, it's tiring for the students to be listening throughout, nothing goes in, I think. So I remember just recently, I had a class with my students in which I just want them to explore the history of theories of learning. So how do we go about doing it? If I were to tell them, they're not going to remember. So, okay, but if I, to just get them to want to be engaged. So I just asked, okay, let's use this Padlet. We have this timeline. So what we do is, I want you to go to the internet or get your books out, read on the history, find who started, what theory starts first, when, and we just plot in the Padlet, because Padlet has this timeline that you can actually plot. So they were doing it, and as they were doing it, we can actually notice that maybe they got something wrong, and you can actually advise them, or your instruction is not clear, and you can clarify what you want from them, because at some point they were writing very long, and so that defeats the purpose. So I advise them, okay, I do not want very long answers, but just what is the year, who are the experts, what are the key features of their theory, and then plot it according to the years. So as they were doing this, they were like, and I can know who is doing and who's not doing because I asked them to register for Padlet. So they have no choice but to actually engage, because you will see like, oh, this person keep doing it, what about the rest? But of course, having said that, it depends on the number of students that you have in class. So perhaps that can be changed into group activities rather than whole class activities. So, so in doing this, we have to think about how can, online has to be there, student-centered learning has got to be there, because otherwise everybody will be so stressed out, connectivity will be so limited, students will not engage in the process, and lecturers will be frustrated because feeling that, why are the students not cooperating? Now, the second thing, which I think the lecturer has to play the role, is to facilitate. Coming with the idea of student-centered learning, we are the facilitator. So instead of gone are the days when you provide notes and notes and notes that the students do not read and they do not understand. Now let them explore the notes, the resources, and we as lecturer can facilitate them in terms of the quality of the information, where they get them from, the ethics in presenting the resources. So we are actually training them in terms of information processing. That's the skill that they will need when they work in the future. We teach them the ethics of, quoting people. And at the same time, we also teaching them to look for information. And then they will do presentation. So in other words, in a way, as Azri pointed out, it's a blessing in disguise. We can, we are so worried that students will not learn, that we feel like we have to feed them, but now we are forced to let them go and trust that they can deliver. That, provided that we do not put in too much work for them. We follow strictly to the syllabus, we follow the learning outcome that has been set, and we provide the facility in terms of resources if we have to, or they can go and look for the information. So in a way, we are saving ourselves from the stress of spending so much time in front of the computer. But having said that, to be a facilitator, now we have this synchronous, asynchronous class meeting. My worry is sometimes when we into the idea of asynchronous, where we don't have to meet students, perhaps what we do is we do 100% asynchronous class, no meeting at all. That is not good. We have to meet, because we have to understand that the students, because I remember some of the students said, my students collected some data from students, they said the idea of just seeing the lecturer is already something for them, because they feel so alone at home. They feel so stressed having to do this, do that, cook, take care of the siblings. Now they are just looking at the computer and the lecturer is not there. So the role of the lecturer is, to be there, to interact with the students, to find out what are their difficulties, to facilitate them in their learning. So synchronous is good. Asynchronous has to be used with caution. You can't assume that they are independent. No. Independent with guidance. So I think understanding independence is important. Understanding self-regulation is important. They are just coming to the university, learning to be adults. So they need the right guidance from the lecturers. So you can't just let them go and do everything and then expect them to be perfect. No, we have to play our role, and our role is as a facilitator. And then, of course, as Prof. Rosna earlier mentioned, assessment. We have to be creative in terms of the kinds of assessment that we do. We want them to present. They can present online. Maybe the assignment is no longer in terms of report. Maybe they have a blog where they express. It's a group blog where they can share information that they gather. So it requires for the, in other words, the lecturer has to be a lifelong learner. Learn about teaching and learning, learn to improve. And so doing action research, doing scholarship of teaching and learning is a way for us to discover what is it that we can do to facilitate our students, so that at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation for us and for the students. Because I know all lecturers have one intention in their heart, which is to have graduates who are successful and who actually learn and become future leaders of the nation. But of course, lecturers struggle, but this has to be the way. We are left with no choice in terms of the new norm. So I think, Dr. Ani, that is what I think some of the roles, main roles of lecturers in this situation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarima, for sharing your thoughts in this regard. Okay, there are roles of educators, roles of learners in existing roles. Okay, but with the new normal, okay, there are additional roles, as has been correctly pointed out by you just now. The need to realign the lesson delivery, to combine synchronous with asynchronous methods, okay, and to learn and relearn things, de-skill and reskill new knowledge, new skills, for example, and also to the most important part would be to understand the needs of our students so that we can facilitate and match, okay, what are their needs with the realignment that needs to be carried out by educators. Okay, thank you so much, Doctor. So it comes to, I would like to pose this question to Prof. Rosna. Okay, taking into account the Azri's thoughts as to the roles of learners and Dr. Sarima's thoughts as to the roles of educators in implementing inclusive community of learners, Prof, what do you think are the important features which support inclusive ecosystem of teaching and learning where everyone can strive to play their roles equally well? Over to you, Prof.
Oh, berat. Okay, I've heard a couple of buzzwords like mental health, self-directed learning, student-centered learning, adaptability. I mean, these are the buzzwords that we need to activate during this pandemic. Even before, I think during pandemic, it's becoming more important for students and also lecturers to be able to appreciate these jargons in education. I think after listening to both from the student perspective and also from the lecturer's perspective, I think what is more important is to develop bonding. The importance of relationship, or in psychology, we call it relatedness. It's very important to build strong connection between student and lecturer, lecturer and community, lecturer, and also student and students. Because in online learning, the learning space is pretty vague, you know. I was wondering, how do students feel coming to online classes when lecturers do not turn on the camera, for instance? Can you do interaction without having you virtually visible to the student? Does it make a lot of difference? So these are the kind of things that the first thing first, like I mentioned earlier, it takes two to tango. So it needs a lot of empathy and sympathy between student and lecturer to make this relationship workable, to make this marriage a happy one during this pandemic, which will be long, if maybe 3 years to come, perhaps. I think it is time for us to appreciate a little bit of psychology of learning. And for instance, how many students are comfortable to turn on the camera during class? Lecturers, I don't ask, because most of them, I think they're prepared. At least they make themselves prepared to turn on the camera during lecture or during interaction. But not every student is willing to share the background at the home. This is something that you want them to, again, the inclusivity, that our definition of inclusivity is I can share what I want freely. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen in real life. Some students, especially from B40, for instance, they may not want to show the home background. They don't want to show the siblings running around. There are so many things. So how can we, as lecturer, for instance, create a learning space where the students feel more comfortable? And students, how do you, for instance, if you don't have a private learning space at home, what do you do to prepare yourself to attend courses, classes online? So you cannot say that, oh, there's nothing I can do. Meaning that it takes both parties to be able to create a learning space that is comfortable for everyone to participate equally. And I think for lecturer, we have to do a lot more work. How can you make students feel more comfortable to contribute, to participate? Dr. Sarima mentioned just now, she was using Padlet. So this is one avenue. If you have 50, 100 students, not everyone can participate. Not everyone has internet facilities, strong internet facilities. So there should be other outlet for them to express their thoughts, their feelings, their disagreement, or their question. So these are kind of, I think it's important when we can create this bonding, because by building this social and emotional bonding, I think we can support the social emotional well-being of both parties. And like I mentioned earlier, if you look at the literature mentioned that students can be more productive if they feel that they are equally appreciated, and they can create, they can sense, they can feel the sense of belonging in the classroom. Am I part of the lecture? Am I part of the classroom? That now there's no physical boundary among us. When you ask them to do group work, for instance, how do you prepare students to know each other? Because some of them could be first semester, they have not met anyone physically. So how are you going to create this bonding, friendship, work in a team to come up with a good proposal, good assignment? So, well, we have to be creative. I don't have the right answer. I think everyone has different ways of maneuvering these issues, but we have to be sure that building strong connection with students and creating opportunities for students to work together in a very comfortable environment, that is something that we have to strive for. Because some students may need some additional learning needs. Because without strong internet connection or without strong devices, for instance, they may not be able to follow your lecture synchronously, for instance. So that comes to my second point in terms of access to and use of technology. How many lecturers record their classroom and their discussion, for instance, for future use? I know some were a little bit reluctant, but I think if we can understand why there is a need for us to record our lecture or our discussion, because some of them may not be able to access to the internet right there and then. So you can save the lecture, but if you can have mutual agreement between you and your students for internal consumption only, not for worldwide distribution, because I know some people may have some privacy in terms of classroom, even though, well, professionally, I think we should be able to share with public, but not everybody is ready. So, but I think it's okay. We give them time. I think as time pass by, I think more people will be more comfortable to share their classroom lecture with public. But for now, I think at least we should be able to make recording available for our students. At least they feel safe. Oh, what did I miss? And suddenly I got disconnected. When I got in, I got lost along the way. So these are the two things I think very, very important for us to understand, not simply for students, especially for lecturer, to ensure that there is a strong bonding, that students can trust us, that they can come to us anytime. Of course, we talk about, Dr. Sari talk about privacy time, the right to disengage. Yeah, we are just human beings. A student has to be considerate enough not to disturb, I don't know, after 7, after 8, not to call your lecturer. But at least I'm pretty sure nowadays Most lecturer, I can guarantee more than 70% of lecturer would have created WhatsApp group, if not Telegram group, whatever, as a platform or outlet for students to voice out their concern or ask question. And student also, of course, you should not be too reliant on the lecturer. I mean, the WhatsApp group should be used to the optimum. If you have question, ask the WhatsApp group, for instance. Don't ask the lecturer individually. If I have 100 students, for instance, oh my God, I'm going to entertain 100 questions. I think your question would benefit the rest. So again, creating that bonding, access to and use of technology appropriately are two very important features. Other features, I think, is perhaps the third one is strong leadership at the faculty or at the department or at the university as a whole, if we're talking about university worldwide. Okay, we need a strong leadership to communicate a clear communication, rules and regulation, procedures for students and lecturers. I think we have been, we have heard what Dr. Sari and also Azri mentioned just now. There are some expectations from each of them, but how do we empower student and lecturer to be able to work in this very critical period? That's another dimension that we need to set the rules straight or procedures well understood by both parties so that students know when or how to communicate or to navigate this, the classes within this pandemic. And I also think the fourth one, we also need, this is a time for us to collaborate actually. Team teaching, collaborating. I worked with my junior lecturer, for instance, last semester. I'm not so techno savvy. I know very basic, but I work with young one, junior one, but the junior one wants my expertise in terms of subject content. So we team teach. We create, she would create the platform, I would go and facilitate. So this is a time for us to create a very supportive university of faculty culture where we can work as a team, because everything is new for us now. So again, who's going to decide that procedures? I think it should be sort of coming from the faculty, coming from the schools in the context of UUM, for instance. How do you support and sort of encourage people to collaborate so that we can work in a more collaborative manner and we can be more responsive and flexible when it comes to approaches, when it comes to lesson delivery? Again, like Azri mentioned just now, is there is always a silver lining. For everything, there is a silver lining. We never thought that we would become, I mean, I myself surprised myself that I can talk to you today here in front of this machine. I was so uncomfortable. I was so uncomfortable those days. Kekok, kita panggil kekok, because I'm so a very sort of a personal person. I need to see your eye. I need to have eye contact to make it more meaningful conversation. But after a year, it has been a year now, I think we've become more comfortable. But we had to thank COVID then for all this. We become more mature, more responsible, and I think this is the way forward. There's no turning back. And finally, I think what we need is a passionate and committed teachers or lecturers and also students. Those are the features we need, because we cannot give up easily. Because during this COVID, during this pandemic, and during this online teaching, we need to be very robust and resilient. Okay, a continuous learning is a must. I attend lecture at least once a week. I will attend one webinar. My favorite is, of course, Prof. Karim and the gang, but I cannot catch up. It's too much. Right? For instance, in my case, at my age, for instance, it's too much. So I just pick whatever that is required. How can I create relationship, bonding with my students so that both of us have empathy, we help each other? I'm not afraid to say I don't know this technology. Why? Because this is a time for us to create this bonding, learning from the students. In terms of technology, a lot we can learn from the students, and the student will be happy. Then they feel that they are appreciated. I mean, this is what I call creating a very safe environment for everyone. I don't feel threatened not to be able to use sophisticated tools during lecture, but at the same time, students also feel that they have a say in the discussion. They have a say on how to move forward about bringing in the courses. So these are the things, Annie, and the rest I can say among the features is pretty much not infrastructure other than access to and use of technology, but it has to do with a lot with the psychosocial development, with our motivation, and with our commitment and passion to make things happen, to make learning happen in the classroom. Okay, Annie, I hand over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Rusna, for deliberating to us the features for sustaining inclusive community of learners. What I can pick up is the importance to sustain the relationship among lecturer with lecturer, lecturer and student, as well as student with the student. So it includes putting a system in place so that we can support safe, psychosocial and emotional well-being of both parties. So having said that, I also treasure the ideas that you have put forward. Not only the roles are coming from students, but also coming from educators, but also coming from strong leadership of the faculty and department by putting in, by outlining the rules and regulations, the procedures, for example. So all in all, this will contribute towards the creation of an inclusive community of learners within an organization or institution like us. Okay? So this is the time for us to move forward, and there is no turning back. My question to Azri would be, we have learned about the roles, the ideas and the thoughts from both learners as well as educators. So now, what can you share with us? What are the students' expectations from the educators in terms of teaching and learning in the new norm? What are the expectations, Azri?
So, okay, thank you so much to Dr. Ani. So actually, what can I say? We can expect a lot as a student, but not to demand. So basically, COVID-19 has been extraordinarily challenging for universities and students, to both parties, teachers and also learners. And the disruption will likely persist beyond the rollout of a vaccine. So the demands on academic staff and students have been continue to be unparalleled. So both must manage work-life balance while teaching and learning in a largely unfamiliar way in the midst of persistent of uncertainty. However, I do really think that in the space of these few months, students and teachers have radically redefined their roles in higher education system. So significant difficulties have largely been met with determination and invention or innovation. So to answer the question, firstly, I do believe that lecturers need to redesign assessments and be more creative towards the technology, different from before. So in order to track on students toward the online learning method, assessment should inform us of where the students are and what should be done to get the students to where they should be. Students want more interactive learning with fewer pre-recorded lectures and slide decks and more opportunity to ask questions. So for me, most of the students they want more personal attention from lecturers and their tutors with more one-on-one support system. So they want help with assessing technologies and learning resources, and they want their universities to be clear in communications, both about what the corporate university is planning and what's happening on their course that they're taking. So secondly, I do believe that the students expect a lot in terms of high stakes final assessment, such as written examinations, are quite impossible during a pandemic. So what's more, they are bad for student well-being, do not accurately represent skills such as creativity, and often bear little resemblance to the real world setting students will be entering after university. So in my opinion, traditional examinations have a focus on recalling information rather than exploring a topic. So on top of that, besides high stakes final assessments that are open book, such as producing case studies, putting together in terms of policy briefing papers, and recording podcasts, can reward curiosity and academic inquiry. So here, assessment is part of the learning journey actually. So teachers may need to use their teaching, asking students to present videos, making podcasts or blogs instead of traditional essays. So there are few invention or innovation that we can use to make it more creative, interactive, and in more fun ways. So in addition, I do believe that pandemic has illuminated what can be done with this online space. It can be engaging, enriching, and accessible, more accessible. Like what Prof. Rosna said before this, she also didn't believe that we can do this forum online and she can speak in front of her laptop. So this pandemic is actually has a very good silver lining. Videos and interactive media are now part of how actually students learn and discuss. Boards allow for conversations to continue and ideas to be recorded outside classes. So on top of that, I do believe that high quality online teaching is one of the most important things to be expected, well above intervention like social interaction, well-being support, and even access to learning resources. So in one sense, it's not surprising that teaching is the core of the university's experience. This does suggest that COVID-19 has thrown teaching quality into sharp relief in the absence of all the other activities that would be otherwise will be filling up learners' days. So put it this way, if I were on campus and I went to a not particularly engaging lecture, then caught up with my classmate afterwards and went to the library to do some reading, the chances are I wouldn't critique whether that lecture was good or bad or how engaged I felt. Yet now, studying alone at home, listening to the same lecture all days and long, that could become the focus of a student's day without other distractions. That lecture goes under the microscope. So moreover, students also might expect to have more lecturers to post assignments a week or 2 weeks in advance, which I do believe most of the lecturers do so. It will allow students some control over their schedules and help them to balance their homework, jobs, and other responsibilities at their homes. So, but in the other hand, students also need to prioritize their priorities and make sure they are well balanced their time management as well. On top of that, I do believe that lecturers must prioritize human connection and relationship with the students also, because lecturers need to understand how challenging it is to be learning in isolation, in the isolation center, in the quarantine center for those students that are affected also, and having tough situation in certain homes also. So as an example, some students might suddenly left to their device when they were used to having a set schedule because they are having affected by the pandemic of COVID-19. Most of the students also might need motivation to become self-directed learners. Once, my friend, a student was absent from an online discussion because it turned out he had to help his mother to buy packed lunch for his younger siblings. So it's very tough actually for some students because they need to juggle on for some other responsibilities at their home. So in addition also, lecturers should be willing to accommodate for students' concern. I do believe that most of the lecturers do their part really well, but for the classes in which this is possible, they should check on the individual students and try to get to know them and their situation. And this allows for a relationship that ensure both parties or both sides, lecturers and also the students, clear about the expectation and also the realities. So if one student is particularly struggling outside of the class, the lecturer will know better how to set a standard for that particular student. This has always been a helpful way to run a classroom, but now it's imperative. So if it's not possible to reach out to every student, teachers should make it clear that everyone is encouraged to reach out with any of their concerns or roadblocks during the semester. So to cut in short, as a conclusion for the third question, for students who are not able to join remote classes also due to lack of internet access, accessibility, and so on and so forth, not having any perfect or proper devices for the online learning, because they had to take additional jobs or home responsibilities during this time, lecturers may need to find other creative ways to connect to the students also. So it's actually a win-win situation for both parts. Students also need to play their role, and also the teachers also need to play their role, so that we can succeed, sustain, and thrive this situation in a better and brighter future. So that's my answer for the third question, Dr. Ani.
Thank you so much, Azri. It feels so great listening to your sharing just now, because it matches a lot with the rules that has been shared by Dr. Sarima just now, as well as the ideas mentioned by Prof. Rusna as well. Why? Because all three panels have been speaking along the same line of discussion, particularly on the understanding of learners, understanding of teachers' needs, understanding of learners' needs as well. Which brings me to the next question to Dr. Sarima. We've heard about the students' expectations of educators. What about the educators' expectations of students in teaching and learning in the new norm? Doctor?
Okay, Dr. Ani, I think this is the most difficult question for me because as an educator, I think a lot of us try to understand both sides of the coin, the students, their difficulties, as well as the lecturer. But having said that, lecturers do have expectations. So I hope this is, whatever that I share will be taken with an open mind, that, at the end of the day, lecturers do have to accommodate and facilitate students for because we set expectation, and we have to make room for adjustments for students to perform their part. So it's not like I expect this from you and you just do it or deliver it. I don't care how you do it. That's not possible. So okay, the first thing I think, just as I said about lecturers, the same thing I would say about students, that the first thing is the students will have to understand that learning is no longer teacher-centered. We have to accept that. The lecturers have to accept that. Students have to accept that. That learning is no longer teacher-centered. Meaning what? It means that students cannot expect lecturers to provide everything. Notes, everything will have to come from the lecturer. The students have to understand, as all of us mentioned again and again, that actually this pandemic is this idea about 21st century learning, all this thing about student-centered learning. COVID-19 is actually pushing us to do it. Basically, we have, as I kept saying, we have no choice. Students have no choice, because the world out there, as Prof. Rusna mentioned, the VUCA world is really, really challenging. I remember a student in my class who's doing a diploma course. He said, while we have to take care of students' needs, their differences, their diversity, their problems, but doctor, we cannot so manja them, because at the end of the day, they are going out there. The real world is challenging. They're not going to get bosses who will manja them. Get the time.
Okay, so I am thinking there might be internet connection error here, but a few things that we have picked up from Dr. Sarima's sharing just now in terms of expectations from educators and learners again. So maybe we wait for a while if she can rejoin us. Yeah. Meanwhile, yeah. Also, it is very interesting to note that the redesigning of the lesson plan as well as the assessment, again, it requires effort from both parts, okay? Both parts in terms of what the students would need, as well as what the lecturers should be learning and should be sharing with the lessons in order to complete or to come up with the completion of the lesson plan. Okay. All right. So meanwhile, okay, I would also like to just summarize, okay, whatever that we have covered, both expectations from students as well as expectation from learners. The meeting point is actually to better understand. Okay, that is what I can pick up that has been pointed out by Azri, as well as been pointed out by Dr. Sarima just now. So I would like to
Ani,
okay, all right.
Dr. Ani, can I?
Okay, Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Do you still want to go on or?
Oh yes,
yeah?
Yes, please, because we are missing a few points here.
Okay, all right. So as I was saying, so the classroom, treat it as the micro world of the big world that we're going to face. So with this pandemic and everything else, we have to learn to acquire all these soft skills that has been proposed many times for the 21st century learning. Now, students have to, another thing which I think we expect from students is to take the responsibility. I know it is difficult, but students have to play their role, take that responsibility, which is be prepared to come to class, complete all tasks, and expect that good grades come with efforts. You can't expect, because sometimes lecturers are stressed out because they are being compared to another lecturer who is considered more lenient. You can get A easily with just a few things that you do, compared to another lecturer who seemed to be very strict and very, focused. But at the end of the day, what do you want from this learning? That, no matter how difficult life is, that you want to be a person who has the skills to learn, to move forward, to become leaders of this the nation. So that responsibility is very important, to come to class, to participate in class, to organize the time well. But of course, having said that, the co-participation between lecturer and student is very important. As the lecturer have to open up to the students, allow and maybe provide time for online engagement or WhatsApp this interaction. The same goes with students. You have to interact with the lecturers, because sometimes students rely more on their friends than the lecturer. Maybe they are afraid of the lecturer, or maybe the lecturer is not welcoming, because some lecturers may be harsh or too strict. But students will have, if the lecturer is like, look pleasant and is open to interaction, by right, lecturers should be, then students should be able to speak to the lecturers, whatever the problems they have, negotiate. For those who have difficulties with internet access and so on, negotiate. Maybe I can't do it this way. I can't, do this online Padlet activity. Is there a way I can do and take a photo of my timeline and send it to you? Will that be considered as another way so negotiation is important. And like some students, they might come late to class, negotiate with the lecturer. I missed that one. Can I do something? It's a give and take between the lecturer, so that the lecturer feels that, my class is important. The student really want to come to my class and learn, and I want to facilitate this student. All in all, this co-participation has to come with respect to for each other. Okay, and sometimes lecturers' worries are that students take advantage. There are a few maybe who take advantage of the situation. They use excuses like internet is bad and so on. So students have to be ethical, tell the truth, don't make up stories, don't cook up stories, because eventually lecturers will find out. Because when you do that, you only affect other students, because once the lecturer feels that students are making up stories, then the lecturer will feel all students are the same. So so there must be a balance in terms of be truthful that this is the situation I am in, even though I don't have the evidence, but my situation is this. Can I negotiate with you a way that I can still do work, I can still submit my work, and I can and you can still be pleased with me and what I do. So that's basically, I think, the expectation from the students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sarima, for the wonderful thoughts and sharing that you have given just now. And one keyword, communication. Okay, communication ensures a good interaction between the teachers and students. Negotiation. Okay, any problems at all, do not go MIA. No, do not go missing in action. Always talk and negotiate. And educators, teachers will understand. Okay? Teachers will, there is always a give and take, okay, by the students as well as by the teachers as well. Which brings me to the last question in our round before we go for the Q&A. I would like to ask Prof. Rosna, okay? Given the thoughts about the expectations from students as well as expectation from educators, would Prof share with us strategies to ensure balanced, inclusive ecosystem of teaching and learning, where both educators and learners can be dialectical in pursuing educational success, especially in the new norm and beyond. Prof?
Yes, Annie. We really need to look beyond, because change cannot come in isolation. I think it needs a systemic change, a very broad change in terms of thinking, in terms of the way we do things. I think the entire campus ecosystem has to play a more synergistic role so that we can understand better and we can facilitate each other better. We are not referring to only students and lecturers, but also the entire ecosystem on campus. HEA, HEPA, COCE, co-curriculum. I mean, it takes a great effort for everyone to work together to ensure that we have a clear university policy to support learning, online learning, for instance. We are talking about digital education. People are talking about digital education. Where are we heading? What kind of digital education? How are we going to achieve that? Definitely, we can only achieve when everybody plays a role. It's not simply up to UMIT to support all these IT facilities. It's not simply the HEPA or HEA. It's the role of everybody. So we need a clear university policy that can support, can create synergy among us. For instance, we have policy in place that lecturers should be given TOT. Okay, how often? At least 2 hours or 8 hours a year minimum into new technologies. How can you ensure that we can increase lecturers' efficacy in delivery and assessment in the new norms, for instance? How are we going to establish that? Of course, we can say that UTLC has done a good job. They've been having all this training almost every day. But is there any policy that necessitates everyone, all lecturers must attend to ensure that they are inclusive in terms of the pedagogy? They know how to use the online pedagogy to the maximum? So these are among other things that we had to re-examine. Are we benefiting everyone or just volunteers? So who's going to do coaching for students? And I know I've heard some students saying that lecturers do not even say salam at the beginning. Just go straight and talk to the slide, PowerPoint. There's no interaction, or after several weeks, there's no discussion, only student presentation without debriefing, for instance. There are issues. And of course, there are students who have been going missing, MIA, for several weeks. So how are we going to put in place a policy that can tackle all this? That is the first thing. And I'm sure UUMIT has its role to facilitate the development of the digital education for campus, for instance. That is first. The second one, I think, we also need to look at to re-examine our curriculum content. Our curriculum content, not the way we deliver, but whether the content is exhaustive, is current, is still relevant to meet the VUCA world. Do we need to re-examine this post-pandemic? Things will be different. We've been talking about artificial intelligence, blockchains, data, big data, etc. Are our programs equipping students with all these, necessities for them to survive in the VUCA world? This is something that we need to re-examine, that the content is really challenging, engaging, and also bring students to come together in some conversations, important conversations, or sometimes we call it difficult conversations. How often do we engage students in difficult conversations, sensitive issues, politics, race, relation, ethnicity, religion, belief? Because this kind of conversation does not necessarily take place only in the MPU subject, like hubungan ethnic relation, and also, all the basic courses. But it can happen in our classroom if you situate the context of learning, and if you can bring in the project that can challenge students to think beyond the boundary. So that we have the ability, university, during the 4 years in university, the curriculum that they are facing are able to harness their potential, harness the global mindedness. When they go out, they are ready. I noticed there is a question from one audience. How are our students ready for the graduation? We're talking about graduate employability. How will this pandemic affect graduate employability? Yes, things have become tougher, in fact. So if, like Dr. Sari mentioned, we manja them, I feel sorry for them because they cannot survive in the real world. So look at our curriculum content. Are we challenging them enough? But of course, there are ways to challenge them, how to motivate them, to arouse the curiosity. That brings me to the next issue. The third one is classroom climate. What kind of classroom climate that we are developing? Is our classroom stimulating the interest and curiosity? Do we create the relationship, very strong bonding between student and teacher, student to student? Are students able to, express the voice or the opinion openly in an inclusive manner, meaning that everybody has the opportunity to give opinion, and students has the opportunity to also respect the opinion of others? To what extent the classroom climate encourage this? In other words, to what extent we as a lecturer create a classroom environment that can stimulate interest, curiosity, and intellectual curiosity among students? This is important because if this is not happening, if this is just very teacher-centered, if this is just a common lecture and discussion, we are not helping them to face what we call the graduate employability issues. And number 4, I think we also have to look at the interaction between student and lecturer, student and staff. I mean, student and lecturer, and the student and the administrator, for instance. Is there any opportunity for them to engage in a very meaningful conversations outside or beyond the formal learning? Is there any quality time spent between student and lecturer outside classroom? Do we have like chat room for them to be able to ask questions in a group, and they are free to ask questions? And later the next day after that, we bring the question to class and discuss further. So I think this is what, when I say inclusive, meaning that everyone has a chance to articulate their thoughts, their opinion in a very safe environment. And finally, we would also like to see student involvement in decision making. Are students involved in the decision making? Are they involved? Are they invited in the university event? I know in UUM, for instance, we invited students to participate in convocation activities. They're part. But how many students are engaged? How many students are involved? So if majority, I know I spoke to one of the HEPA officers, the issue with our student is that the same student keep appearing in the same event. So maybe half of the students are not engaged, are not involved. How can we make the campus environment, be it physical, be it online, more inclusive? They have a role, they have a place to participate. For instance, nowadays, beginning last year, we had student participant or student representative sitting in Senate. Azri, for instance, is an example of MPP sitting in Senate. So his voice is there in Senate. So how are we going to prepare them to have a voice in Senate? We can simply, of course, we can invite them to sit in Senate as a formality. Yes, you're invited now. Do we have any training? Do we have any, activities to ensure that they can become a very active participant in Senate? This is just one example. Students can sit in many other committees at the university level, or HEPA or DPP, okay, student residential colleges. So what do we do to make sure that they are part of the decision making, executing important events? Because all this, what we call, I will summarize as a learning experience. We need to create an inclusive learning experience where everyone has a place to participate. They may not be able to participate in all, but they will have some platform for them to engage or to be involved in some participation. Because this is important, because learning experience during undergraduate will determine whether they're able to survive out there. Especially with the post-pandemic graduate employability, they need more soft skills. Where do we provide these soft skills? I noticed there are questions that students doing part-time job. Yeah, it's common. I think there's nothing wrong with that part-time job. If you look at in Western countries, I was a student in North American University. I worked 20 hours a week all the time, since undergraduate until PhD. So you work all the time because this work experience that nurture our soft skills, nurture our holistic student development to take responsibility as an adult before even you graduate. So I think, Ani, if you look at, again, coming back to the question, we need a systemic change, understanding about what university can play a role, or how university can play a more effective role to nurture holistic graduates, so that the graduates we are producing will be someone who can function effectively to solve the world issues, if not the local only. So that is our aim, actually, our ultimate aim. I'm sure we are still struggling, but we have to start somewhere, to start thinking, to start educating people. This is the role of the university in higher education, to nurture future leaders, to nurture holistic, and also someone with the highest integrity, with a good moral compass, who can tell, who can negotiate between the right and wrong. That is something that we have not been able to do, I think. Because if you look at the adults today, look at our surrounding, look at our department. How many people are willing to negotiate? How many people are willing to have have the intellectual courage to say something during meetings, for instance, to voice out the differences. Because we don't celebrate. We are not inclusive. We only listen to those that we think that will be aligned with our thinking. But where is the place for us to develop if we are not giving opportunities for different views to be expressed, to be deliberated? So we have a long way to go as a country, actually, but we have to start today. That's it, Annie.
Thank you so much, Prof. Again, okay, you have given wonderful thoughts as to these strategies that we can do to further ensure balanced, inclusive communities of learners that we are aiming for. Okay, now I would like to read some of the questions that we have gathered from both YouTube as well as Facebook. Okay, some of the questions I would like to address. The first question, in fact, this is has already been addressed partly by Prof. Rosna just now, in terms of the situation where students are working. Now, given that students do not have to attend classes physically, it's not to attend, but there is no requirement according to the policies. Okay? But so some are taking this as an advantage, okay, for taking up jobs. Okay, so what are your thoughts, Azri, about this?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. So it's regarding about opinion on students are working part-time or full-time and still have to attend their online classes on a daily basis. So for me, as what Prof. Rosna said, there's nothing wrong with that actually, because when we make a reference to the foreign workers, sorry, foreign students outside Malaysia, they also have part-time jobs here and there. And also in our campus in University Utara Malaysia, we have on-campus job program or OCJ, which the opportunities provided by the university actually. So our Vice Chancellor, Dato Bashawi, also have been said that the students will be allowed to work part-time at the university with a maximum of 15 hours per week per student. And all the programs provided by the UUM, for me, it showed that the university never neglected the welfare of the students, but give them the opportunity to earn money by working part-time on campus. So to summarize this question, there must be the pros and cons to this question, but I just want to focus more on the benefits and advantages only, since I do really think that it's nothing wrong on working part-time or full-time during our online classes. It's on my opinion and my stand. So I've learned that to be a successful distance learner, you have to be self-disciplined and able to work well on your own. Since you won't be physically going to class each week, you can take part in class from the comfort of your own home. So you must be self-disciplined because the instructor or the teacher or the lecturers won't constantly be there to remind you of assignments or of project deadlines or due dates. So you must be self-disciplined no matter what. So other obligations may mean that you are not able to do work as regularly as if you were physically attending class. So they are actually have some thoughts on the students must be really well in self-discipline. It will be up to you, to the students, to make sure that they keep on going with all the work for the course or the subjects that they are taking to. Also, one of the main objectives of university is to become a well-rounded individual with the skills needed to successfully manage a busy agenda. So when a person has to work part-time, it is hard actually for that person to successfully juggle on their job responsibilities along with homework and also their study during the semester. So a person can always deal with the time constraint that a job will put on them. So the use of online learning allows the learners to cover the material needed in the university while maintaining their workloads, on my opinion. So first and foremost, the pros that I can see really well and very clear is regarding about working part-time can actually help to improve the students' self-esteem. So part-time work can teach students about their responsibility too. It also gives them a chance to put into practice skills which they might have learned in the university, but they should also make sure that their part-time work does not interfere their studies. Also, I do believe that by doing part-time jobs, they can have enough experience when they are graduate. So they can use that as a solution to the problems of experience coming for next in the future of interviews when they want to get the future work. Next, I would see that by doing part-time job during this online learning, it can bring to the student can learn to manage their time with a lot of prioritization. So becoming a distance learner is like buying a ticket to a time management class. Only this time experience will be your coach. So as an online student, you should consider coming home from work as quickly as possible so you have time to study, you have time to do your assessment, your assignment, and also you need to make sure you would have the right time management to complete all the tasks given by the lecturers and complete it on the due dates. So developing time management skills will play a key role in your chances, in the student chances of succeeding to combine your work, your part-time work or your full-time work with your full-time studies or online studies. So I would like to suggest to all students to do not fall into the trap of assuming that distance learning is actually very different from full-time studies and perhaps even easier to handle. The fact that studying for an online degree or online courses program is going to be almost as demanding as you were a full-time student, and you should allow on average approximately, on my opinion, as a student, approximately 40 hours a week to study. So hence it's important to organize your time very early on. So one of the best way to enjoy the flexibility of online studies is to work more on your assignments and classes on weekends. So one important thing the students should remember when planning their time is to keep the deadlines for submission of all kinds of assignments, essays, final papers, research papers, discussion papers, quizzes, tests, and so on. So otherwise, the workload may become rather scary or once the number of pending assignments starts to grow. And then next part, I would like to focus more on redefining engagement. So before the pandemic, I would like really to say that engagement and attendance were often synonymous. A student's participation in a course was measured by whether or not they turn up in a person to lectures or classes. So when no one can physically present, we are forced to redefine what engagement truly means and how we can be sure it is happening. So during the physical classes and online classes, how we engage with the lecturers are different thing. And we need to redefine the term of engagement actually. How should we engage with the lecturers during these online classes? So the interaction and discussion that students take part in online can say much more about engagement than simply showing up at the lecture. So this is particularly true for those with caring or students' commitment who might have found regularly attending a class on campus challenging, but are able to demonstrate their enthusiasms and insight more clearly online. So all in all, I do believe that there are more pros and cons for doing a part-time job or full-time job during these online classes. But I do believe that on top of that, it's nothing wrong with doing part-time jobs since we can have gained so much benefit towards it. And it also can help clearly in terms of financial aspects for the families that are really struggle during this pandemic of COVID-19. So the students might help their parents and families to bring the food to the table and make sure they can survive during these issues or crisis of the pandemic COVID-19. So I think that's it. That's the answer for the question, Dr. Ani.
Thank you, Azri, for sharing your thought. It's so interesting that you have shared in the past about the roles and expectations, about engagement, about redesigning lessons, for example. So to match that with Dr. Sarima's sharing as to we are putting our effort into increasing engagement and communication and interaction with the students. But now, as if we are saying that, it is okay for students not to come to the class because of different family needs and everything. So can I ask Sarima here, how can we actually balance between the needs of the students in meeting their own family needs, for example, their need to attend to entrepreneurship activities, to do work part-time, with the expectations of the lecturers that students will actually come and participate in the synchronous as well as the asynchronous lessons. Sarima? Okay. Right. Okay, I think that Sarima is out of the meeting room again, but it's okay. Okay, maybe I can channel with a twist a little bit question to Prof. Rusna, because it is one question from the audience. In fact, okay, about creating bonding and motivation is so difficult. We couldn't see students' faces. We could not, sometimes students will have poor connection. Some even would not participate, okay? Do not even type in the chat room due to, we can understand the difficulties that they couldn't tell, okay? They couldn't tell their side of the story, for example. So here, in this case, when lecturers realign this with the earlier question as well, whereby one of the question is, we want students to be engaged and communicating in class, but students will feel stressed, okay, because of that. So how do we actually balance between the lecturers wanting the students to communicate and engage in class with the students feeling stressed that their names are being called in class now? Prof?
Well, it depends on the connectivity, right? First, one person mentioned about lack of connectivity, right? But there are so many ways, other ways, I think. I don't have the list, but if you Google, there are hundreds of ways to create bonding, to ensure to get some sort of response from students, or otherwise, we had to come up with certain rules and regulation. On the very first day, we have to set the rules straightforward. Yeah, this is how we're going to conduct of the classroom. So, for instance, in my case, I always have a very traditional one. I have a Padlet. I introduce myself, just type, put my picture, kind of very personal to introduce. Hi, I'm so and so. I've been with UEM for 31 years. And then why don't you share your background? Just to ice-breaking activities, to make them feel comfortable. I'm also a human being, even though I'm old professor, but I'm a human being just like you. So I have feelings and you have feelings. So you have to create this mutual understanding, mutual respect that I'm tired too, I'm stressful too due to COVID, and we are in this together. So I think ability to connect at the moment instantly, I think is very important to get support from students. And then they may not be able to participate synchronously, but there are ways you can create chat room or forum or whatever that allow them to say even one single line. And sometimes perhaps you can pick up random. In every lecture, you will invite a few to say something, to share their thoughts, or you want to bring back their forum, their comments. Aisha, you mentioned this in the comment. What do you mean? Can you share with us further? Things like that, you know? So, but if they are stressful, they have to get used to it. We have to train them to be able to articulate the thoughts. I know they're stressful. Even lecturers also are stressful during meetings. Very few lecturers, young ones, would like to say something during meetings, for instance. It's common. But if you don't train them to overcome fear and anxiety, how are you going to face the real world? So that's how you have to convince them. I'm doing this because I love you. Sayang anak dipukul-pukulkan. If I don't love you, I don't care about you. I just ignore you, neglect your presence. But because I care about you, so please say something. So everybody will have a chance. Turn all this anxiety into something, a funfair. Everybody will have a chance to say something. So first, you can choose, meaning that you create autonomy for students. Students have autonomy to decide when they want to speak. So maybe this day, I'm going to, after MCO, for instance, I'm going to go to this internet cafe. I'm going to have this internet connectivity, very strong internet connectivity, only twice during the semester. And during those two participation, I'm going to say something. And I'm going to explain to my lecturer that my connectivity at home is so poor that I have to go to the internet cafe or whatever, you know. So this is a time for me to, and there are so many ways. Like Dr. Sari mentioned, it's always negotiation and motivation, giving hopes and create hopes for them and to at least smile, get their sort of response, positive response. I know it's challenging. If you have 100 students, you may not be able to reach out to 10%. It's okay. At least you try, you're very hard, and eventually you find ways. Because we are not God, we don't know what ticks them. What ticks you may not be the same, but what ticks me. So we try, but again, with continuous learning, attending session about understanding learners, how learners are different, how undergraduates are struggling during the undergraduate years. We need to understand the psychosocial development during undergraduates. Without that knowledge, how can you facilitate? But unfortunately, not all lecturers are trained about psychosocial development during undergraduates, about the struggle the undergraduates are facing. So I would like to invite you all to come to UTLC, look for some courses that may be relevant about understanding learners. We can understand them better. And perhaps by understanding students, you understand yourself better, ourselves better. That's the best I can say. There's no magic formula, hard work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. That's very enlightening, especially that we now have to know that we can, we need both, okay, both effort from the educators as well as the learners. Now, I think most of the questions have already been responded to. Probably I can ask this final question to Dr. Sarima by one of our audience on Facebook. Given all the challenges that have been discussed earlier, can Dr. Sarima share some thoughts on the extent of inclusivity issue and its probable impact that it may have in nurturing one's self-consciousness, which is teacher-learner relationship, on surrounding community where each belongs to?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ani. I'm not sure I understand the question, but okay, inclusivity for me is not something that we can expect other people to do it for us. It has to come from everyone. It has to come from the university. It has to come from the lecturer, from the students, everybody. That we have to have the sense of, you know, we are a community, that nothing works without the parts. Things don't work when one part is missing. So as we are facilitating the students in learning, somebody has to facilitate the lecturers in teaching, in attending. I mean, it's got to be this way. And also, I think my 2 years I was in the administrative post. In the past, I complained about how maybe the administratives are not helping. But as I work, I realized that the ecosystem of university teaching and learning is about everybody, because the administrative staff, I mean, like HEA, they were awesome. They worked. There was one time which I thought I was going home, and I thought, you know, it was already late, 5 something. They were staying back, doing their best to, you know, I can't remember what they were doing, but I was like, you still here? You know, I always thought lecturers were the one who stay back. I didn't realize that other people are doing the same thing. So for me, inclusivity is, one thing is to understand each and everybody's role and stop judging. That is very crucial. We have to stop judging. Lecturers have to stop judging the students without evidence. Students stop judging lecturers. Take time to understand what's happening. administrative, stop blaming lecturers for everything. I remember, Prof. Rosna saying, students have to have their voices heard. I think a lot of times lecturers do not have their voices heard. As Prof pointed out, young lecturers are so afraid to voice out. Not only young lecturers, sometimes I feel there is no point in talking because, do people listen? But if I do that, then inclusivity is not going to happen. It's about really negotiating. How can we work this out together? Everybody has a conscience. We have to be clear that we are not working just for our own pot of rice. We are not teaching or learning or organizing or managing just for our own, home, our own family. This ecosystem depends on everybody. So I wish that, this kind of forum can be held more for more people to actually express, students, lecturers, administrative, so that we will understand what are the issues, because there's a lot of miscommunication, misunderstandings among us. I think as a Muslim, I believe that everybody has the fitrah. The fitrah is to do good. We're not born to do bad. But along the way, our experiences are telling us, our students are like this, lecturers are like that, administratives are like this. But in actual fact, we come with good intentions. Only how do we move with that intention? And sometimes our intentions are colored by all those experiences that we become so judgmental. So I don't know whether I'm answering that question, but inclusivity is about everybody. You build the block together. It's not somebody built the block and somebody comes and destroy the block. Everybody is the team. That's the way for us to move forward. I don't know if I make sense.
I agree with you, Dr. Sari, because it's the synergistic effort among members in the community that make things become inclusive. If we don't celebrate diversity, don't celebrate differences, different voice, so there's no point having a conversation. Because when people try to avoid difficult conversation, that's it. You're not willing to listen.
Thank you so much, everyone. So I put inclusivity is everybody. It takes the effort of everyone. In bracket, Sarimah, Rosna, Azri, 2021, just say that it takes the effort from everybody to make this happen, to create and to sustain inclusive community of learners in teaching and learning throughout this 2 hours plus session that we have already covered, the challenges in teaching and learning in the new norm and beyond, the roles of educators and students, the expectations, as well as the strategies to create and also sustain inclusive community of learners. So I would like to personally thank you all the panelists for sharing your thoughts elaboratively today, the fruitful discussion. And we have audience not only from UUM community, we also have from other universities as well. Having said that, I would like to personally again welcome everyone to join our upcoming sessions by UTLC, which has been structured, okay, for the benefit of the teaching and learning as a whole. I would like to apologize for any shortcomings on my part while I am doing the moderation session. Maybe I'm going to give 1 minute to each panelist to say last few words. Yeah, I'm going to begin with Prof. Rosna. Last few words, 1 minute only, Prof.
Well, to understand inclusivity is to understand the role of higher education. What is the raison d'etre for a higher education, for a university? That is to nurture a very holistic, balanced, holistic graduate who can function effectively. So without having this understanding, this concept of inclusivity, we will not be able to give meaningful learning experience that can help the graduates to thrive, to become a better person, to become a more resilient and robust person to face the VUCA world. So that is everybody's responsibility in the community. The lecturer, the student takes two to tango, and the surrounding community, the entire campus community is responsible to nurture this holistic graduate.
Thank you so much, Prof. Rusna. Dr. Sarima?
Not easy to say in a short sentence, but inclusivity for me is all of us getting into the field, bringing all the tools, working together to make it work for the better, for the better livings of everyone in that community. Everybody has to work together.
So much, Dr. Sarima. Azri?
Okay, for me, my part, I would like to say inclusivity is everyone. It's everyone's effort. It's the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, such as those having physical or mental disabilities or belonging to other minority groups. So in my opinion, everyone need to play their parts. No matter you are a teacher or you are a learner, we need to work out this together during these tough times, during this pandemic COVID-19 days. We need to work out together and be together to make sure that we can success and sustain, thrive, and survive towards these pandemic days. So I think that's all.
Okay, with that, thank you so much, everyone. I would like to return the session to Madam Fadlina from UTLC UUM.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ani Munira and all the panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this session. We sincerely thank everyone for your invaluable input and participation, and to all the panelists for gracing this event. It is hoped that through these 2 hours discussions, all of us will have gathered appropriate and relevant input to help improve and transform the quality of teaching and learning in UUM. On behalf of the organizing committee, I thank you once again. Please stay at home, stay safe, and take care. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Dah habis ke?
Kita tak ambil gambar panel. Tak ambil group. Gambar group.